I'm not suggesting Queen Camilla lacks authority, but that tiara isn't hers. It rightfully belongs to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, for the Christmas gala at Buckingham,
The decision was quiet, but its meaning was impossible to miss. Princess Anne had reclaimed the Queen Mother's emerald necklace from the royal vault, personally restoring the historic jewel to her control after Camilla was denied access to it. There was no public ceremony, no smiling photograph, no carefully softened announcement. Instead, a locked vault, a rejected request, and Anne's unmistakable intervention suddenly exposed a deeper battle over inheritance, authority, and royal legitimacy. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne did not celebrate. She received the confirmation in silence, read the authorization twice, and pressed one finger against the page, as if fixing the decision in place. The royal vault was the secure storage system used to protect historic jewels and other valuable pieces connected to the crown. This necklace mattered because it had been closely tied to the Queen Mother and treated as part of a guarded family legacy, not as an ordinary accessory available whenever a senior royal requested it. For Anne, allowing uncertainty risked turning inherited memory into a struggle over present royal rank. When the princess finally spoke, her words were calm. The emeralds would not remain where another request could create uncertainty. Camilla reacted differently. She learned that the necklace had been moved under Anne's direct custodial control, meaning the princess now held responsibility for protecting and approving access to it, and the message landed with more force than she expected. The queen consort understood immediately that this was not simply about jewelry. It was about which parts of royal history she could touch, which symbols she could wear, and where the family still believed a boundary had to remain. She asked one question, then went quiet. Who had changed the rules? Anne was already looking for that answer herself. She requested the necklace's full custodial record, including earlier applications, refusals, ceremonial notes, and any instruction attached to future use. That request uncovered something more troubling. The latest restriction demanded approval from a much narrower circle than Camilla had expected, suggesting that the limits around the emeralds had been tightened long before this moment. The princess turned another page and stopped. One entry reached back to an earlier royal occasion when Camilla had privately asked for the same necklace. Anne remembered it immediately. She remembered the timing, the pressure, and the uneasy feeling that followed. And once that forgotten request was pulled back into the light, this stopped being a story about an emerald necklace and became a story about two women, one royal legacy, and a boundary neither was prepared to surrender. For Anne, the necklace carries memories that cannot be separated from family, duty, and the women who shaped the monarchy before her. For Camilla, being denied access cuts in an entirely different direction. She holds rank, visibility, and proximity to the crown. Yet one historic object has suddenly reminded her that status does not automatically unlock every door. What follows is not loud hostility. It is something colder, two competing understandings of what royal belonging actually means. Anne opened the case only after the room had fallen quiet. The emerald necklace rested before her, but she made no move to try it on or arrange for it to appear at some future engagement. To her, inherited royal objects were never simply decorations. They carried family memory, precedent, and obligations that could survive one reign and pass into the next. That was why this moment mattered. The princess had not taken control of the emeralds to display them. She had done it because she believed their meaning could be weakened if access became automatic. Camilla felt the same decision as a rejection of something much more personal. As Charles's wife, and one of the most senior figures in the current royal household, she had expected her ceremonial role to bring practical access to historic pieces associated with women who once stood near the crown. The queen consort did not need to own the necklace to understand its symbolism. Being refused told her that rank could place her at the center of royal life while still leaving certain doors firmly closed. Anne closed the jewelry case again. That simple movement said everything. She had no interest in claiming the emeralds as her own, yet she was equally unwilling to allow their history to become secondary to present status. Then another detail reached her. Camilla's interest had not begun with the latest request. Earlier attempts had already been made to clarify whether the necklace could be released for ceremonial use, proving that the tension had been building quietly long before the vault decision. Camilla turned to Charles once the confirmation became impossible to ignore. She kept her voice controlled and asked whether Anne now decided which parts of royal history belonged to whom. The king hesitated. He understood that stepping in might comfort his wife, but overruling his sister would turn a private disagreement into a direct fight over custodial tradition, the responsibility of protecting and controlling how historic royal objects are used. Charles chose his words carefully, but the hesitation was enough. Camilla saw that he understood Anne's position, even if he did not fully embrace it. And Anne, meanwhile, had already found the detail that explained why this dispute felt so familiar. That earlier intervention was the moment the disagreement became personal, and the palace would later recognize it as the point from which the final vault decision became almost inevitable. Every royal rupture has a moment that looks small, until history gives it weight. In this case, it came before a major palace reception, when a request crossed the wrong desk at exactly the wrong time. Camilla wanted the Queen Mother's emerald necklace prepared for the evening. Anne discovered the request before the jewel left storage. What happened in the private exchange that followed became the hidden trigger for everything now unfolding around the vault. Camilla had expected the request to be routine. 18 months earlier, before a Windsor diplomatic reception, her household asked for the emerald necklace to be prepared to match the evening gown chosen for the event. A diplomatic reception is a formal royal gathering for visiting representatives and senior guests, and every detail carries symbolic weight because the person wearing a historic jewel is seen as representing the crown itself. That was exactly why Anne reacted so strongly when she discovered the request during a review of legacy pieces linked to senior royal women who had died. Anne questioned why the necklace had been selected without any prior family discussion. She did not raise her voice, but her concern was immediate. The princess believed certain objects carried emotional meaning that could not simply follow whoever currently held the highest rank. When Camilla learned that the request had been challenged, she asked to speak privately, rather than let staff continue passing messages between households. Camilla faced her directly. Anne told her that some pieces could not automatically move with title or position. The queen consort answered that she was not trying to rewrite the past. She was trying to perform the role she held in the present. For a few seconds, neither woman softened. One was defending continuity. The other was defending legitimacy. And neither believed she was asking for too much. Camilla attended the reception wearing a different necklace. She entered composed, greeted guests, and fulfilled every public duty expected of her. Anne watched her arrive but said nothing. That silence mattered, because both women knew the argument had not ended. It had simply been pushed beneath the surface. Anne acted after the reception. She requested a formal review of the emerald necklace's access conditions, meaning the rules governing who could request and use it would be examined and tightened if necessary. Charles was informed through a documented palace briefing, but he chose not to overrule his sister. The king believed the disagreement would fade once the event had passed. Instead, his silence allowed Anne's concern to become precedent. Now that old decision had returned with force. The necklace was no longer merely restricted. It had been physically removed from the vault under Anne's authority. Camilla had reached her limit. The old wound has become a present humiliation, And this time Camilla will not communicate through staff, records, or requests. She will confront Anne herself. There are moments when royal restraint becomes more dangerous than shouting. Camilla enters the private meeting wanting one answer. Why was she denied access while Anne was permitted to reclaim the necklace immediately? Anne does not avoid the question. She does not soften the language. With no aides between them and no ceremony to hide behind, two senior royal women finally address the issue that has been building for months, and neither leaves unchanged. Camilla closes the distance first. She has already decided that formal messages between households have done enough damage, so she asks for a private palace sitting room and speaks without staff present. The queen consort keeps her voice controlled, but the question is sharp. Why was her request to borrow the emeralds rejected, while Anne's custodial request was approved at once? Custodial authority means responsibility for protecting an object and controlling how it is released. And that difference now sits at the heart of the dispute. One woman asked to wear the necklace. The other asked to control its future. Camilla does not look away. Was the necklace protected from everyone, or protected from me? The words change the temperature of the room. Anne pauses before answering, because she knows the question is no longer about procedure. The princess says the distinction is exactly why the rules had to be clarified. If access could be assumed because of rank, then the meaning attached to the necklace would eventually disappear beneath present-day privilege. Anne places the closed jewelry case between them and leaves it unopened. The gesture is deliberate. She is not showing off the emeralds, and she is not claiming them as a personal prize. Instead, she makes the dispute harder to dismiss. The case represents the Queen Mother's legacy, and both women understand that whoever controls its use also influences how that legacy is carried forward. Camilla presses again, and this time Anne answers with the details she had been holding back. Through the documented custodial review created after the diplomatic reception incident, the princess explains that the necklace had already been placed under exceptional approval long before the latest request. That status meant ordinary ceremonial borrowing was no longer enough. The restriction had history. Camilla's anger shifts direction. She realizes Charles knew the access conditions had changed and never told her how firmly the rule had hardened. The queen consort says little after that, but the disappointment is unmistakable. Anne watches her rise, knowing the next conversation will not be with her. Camilla leaves angry but controlled. She is no longer asking whether Anne had the power to act. She is going directly to the man who allowed that power to stand. The confrontation ends when the door closes behind Camilla, but the real decision now belongs to the man who has avoided making one from the beginning. Charles can end the dispute with a single intervention, but doing so would create a far greater problem. If he overturns Anne's custodial decision, he risks appearing to place present rank above inherited royal tradition. If he refuses Camilla, he confirms that even proximity to the sovereign has limits. Alone with the paperwork that everyone else has argued around, Charles is finally forced to confront the truth. His silence helped create this crisis, and silence will no longer solve it. Charles reads the access file alone and reaches the notation created after the Windsor reception. The king knows he has enormous influence, but historic royal jewels in this story are governed by custodial conventions, family understandings, and written access records, rather than simple personal preference. That matters, because overturning the restriction would not look like a small private favor. It would look like the monarch rewriting a family boundary to protect his wife. Anne, meanwhile, has strengthened her position by refusing to claim the necklace for herself. She has framed every step as protection of continuity, not possession. Charles removes his glasses and places them beside the papers. He says nothing for several seconds. The monarch can see how easily the dispute became dangerous. One decision might comfort Camilla while weakening the very tradition Anne is defending. Yet doing nothing has already caused damage. His earlier silence allowed the restriction to become accepted practice, and now every choice carries a cost. Camilla comes to him directly. She no longer asks for explanations about procedure. The Queen Consort asks him to reverse the denial. Charles listens, but this time he does not hesitate. He tells her he will not overturn Anne's custodial decision. The words are controlled, almost gentle, but they land hard. She hears something deeper than a refusal over jewelry. To her, it feels like confirmation that the king will defend a boundary that leaves part of royal history outside her reach. Charles signs the clarification anyway. The document confirms that the Queen Mother's emerald necklace will remain under restricted family stewardship, meaning it can be protected and approved only through special family control, rather than an ordinary ceremonial request. The king also gives Anne responsibility for recommending when, and by whom, the emeralds may next be worn. That changes everything. Her intervention is no longer temporary. It now shapes the necklace's future. Camilla leaves the conversation wounded but composed. Anne receives confirmation of the decision and understands immediately how far Charles has gone. He has not simply refused to interfere. He has made the restriction stronger. The signature settles the immediate question, but it also changes the balance of the room. And by the following morning, everyone close to the dispute understands that a new royal boundary has been drawn. The hardest royal defeats rarely arrive with public declarations. They arrive in quiet confirmations. A revised access note, a cancelled preparation, a member of staff choosing careful words because the meaning behind them is already understood. For Camilla, the new reality becomes undeniable when her household receives formal confirmation that the emerald necklace is no longer available through the route she expected to use. The argument is over on paper, but emotionally, the damage is only beginning. Camilla receives the updated instruction at her desk and reads it twice. The Queen Consort now sees in plain language that the necklace requires exceptional approval and remains under Anne's oversight. Exceptional approval means the piece can no longer be requested through the normal ceremonial process. It needs special permission before it can be released. That matters because palace staff immediately adjust future jewelry planning, removing the emeralds from the list of pieces considered available for her public appearances. What had once been a difficult request has become a closed route. Camilla folds the notification once and sets it down. She asks her aide to leave. When the door closes, she remains seated in silence. Not because there is nothing to say, but because every possible response feels smaller than the message itself. The Queen Consort understands that this is no longer temporary. The decision has moved beyond one event, one dress, or one disagreement. A permanent boundary is taking shape around her. Charles comes to see her later. Camilla does not argue about the necklace itself. She tells the king that the decision has left her feeling as though parts of the family's history will always remain beyond her reach, no matter how close she stands to the crown. He listens without interrupting. The monarch knows the wound is emotional now, and no technical explanation can soften it. Anne acts again before anyone can challenge the new arrangement. She orders the necklace transferred from temporary secure holding into a family-controlled legacy collection, a protected group of historic pieces kept for long-term continuity rather than routine ceremonial use. That move makes reversal far more difficult. A future scheduling request will no longer be enough to reopen the question. Anne then makes the choice nobody expected. She does not reserve the emeralds for herself. Instead, the princess begins considering whether the necklace should one day return through a younger generation, worn only when the moment carries enough meaning to justify it. That decision changes the emotional shape of the conflict. Anne asks Charles for a private meeting before anything further is decided. Not as monarch and princess, as brother and sister. What follows is quieter than the confrontation with Camilla, yet far more decisive, because for the first time, Anne explains to Charles what she is truly trying to protect. No courtiers, no folders passed across desks, no formal language to create distance. When Anne and Charles finally speak alone, the emerald necklace stops being a contested royal object and becomes something painfully personal. Anne tells her brother that she never reclaimed it to embarrass his wife. She reclaimed it because she believes some inheritances must carry memory before status. Charles listens differently this time, and one private exchange changes the emotional meaning of the entire dispute. Anne begins without ceremony. She tells Charles that everything surrounding the necklace has grown larger than she intended, but the reason she acted has not changed. The princess has always seen continuity as more than keeping old traditions alive. It means passing certain historic objects forward, with deliberate meaning, especially pieces tied closely to royal women who shaped the family before them. In her mind, those objects should not simply follow whoever currently holds the highest position. Anne admits what disturbed her most. Watching the Queen Mother's necklace become the subject of repeated access requests made her feel as though a family memory was slowly being reduced to wardrobe planning. She tells the king that the emeralds are valuable because of what they represent, not because of how striking they might appear at a ceremony. Charles hears the frustration beneath her restraint, and for the first time he understands that she never saw the dispute as a fight against Camilla personally. Charles answers with the truth he has avoided saying aloud. He tells Anne that Camilla experienced the restriction as a judgment on her legitimacy, not simply as a decision about jewelry. The monarch explains that his wife felt the boundary suggested she could stand beside the crown and still remain outside parts of the family's history. Anne does not dismiss that pain. She says protecting one legacy should never require humiliating another person. But compassion cannot mean abandoning every boundary the moment someone feels hurt. Anne then explains the solution she has been considering. She wants the emerald necklace preserved until a future ceremonial moment, when it can pass to the next generation with purpose, not as a prize won by rank. The princess believes that would restore meaning to the jewel and remove it from the struggle between present positions. Charles agrees. He tells her the necklace will not return to ordinary borrowing circulation, definitively ending the internal argument and giving her custodial approach royal backing. For both of them, the decision finally feels settled, but the settlement does not stay private. The family finally understands what the decision means inside the palace, but outside those walls, a single headline is about to turn a private boundary into a national argument about history, status, and who truly inherits royal memory. By morning, the private dispute has become impossible to contain. The emerald necklace is suddenly more than jewelry. It is a symbol onto which the public projects every unresolved question about Camilla, Anne, royal inheritance, and the women who came before them. Yet one image captures the mood more powerfully than commentary ever could. Crowds gathering outside Buckingham Palace beneath newspaper pages, dominated by the same striking contrast. Anne reclaimed it. Camilla was denied. Palace officials move quickly to contain the damage. Their message is careful. This is a custodial decision concerning a historic family piece, not a personal punishment directed at Camilla. Custodial responsibility means deciding how a protected royal object is preserved, released, and passed forward. And that distinction matters now because the public is reading emotion into every line. Commentators split almost immediately. Some see Anne as defending continuity. Others see the Queen Consort being reminded, in the most public way possible, that ceremonial status does not automatically erase the monarchy's older family boundaries. Anne sees the coverage and feels no satisfaction. The princess tells a close aide in a private conversation that the necklace was never supposed to become a weapon against anyone. She wanted the emeralds protected from casual use, not transformed into proof of another woman's humiliation. That matters because her victory now carries a cost she did not seek. The stronger the headlines become, the more her act of preservation begins to resemble punishment. Camilla watches a television discussion later that morning. The presenter describes the restriction as a boundary around the Queen Mother's legacy, and the phrase lands hard. The Queen Consort reaches for the remote and turns off the broadcast before the segment ends. She has already argued with Anne, appealed to Charles, and absorbed the final decision. This time, she chooses withdrawal over another fight. Outside Buckingham Palace, the story takes on a life of its own. A London newspaper appears with a full-width image of the Queen Mother wearing emeralds beneath the headline, "Anne takes back the emeralds." Beside it sits a smaller image of Camilla under two stark words, "Access denied." Copies are held up near the palace gates as people gather, debate, and point at the front page. Public sympathy refuses to settle neatly. Some praise Anne's stand as principled. Others see the emotional sting of singling out Camilla and question whether preserving history had to feel so personal. But the newspapers will not decide the final meaning of this moment. Anne will. With the noise outside reaching its peak, she makes one last decision, one that transforms the emeralds from a symbol of exclusion into a statement about what royal inheritance is supposed to mean. In the end, nobody wins the emerald necklace in the way the public expected. Anne does not claim it for herself. Camilla does not gain the access she sought. Charles does not reverse the restriction to restore peace. Instead, the family arrives at a harder conclusion. Some objects carry histories too specific to become prizes in the politics of the present. And by choosing preservation over possession, Anne gives the controversy its final and unmistakable meaning. Anne confirms the final arrangement without hesitation. The Queen Mother's emerald necklace will remain protected inside the legacy collection and will not return to the automatic ceremonial rotation used for senior royal women. A legacy collection is a protected group of historic pieces, preserved because of their family meaning and long-term significance, not because they are expected to appear regularly at public events. That distinction matters now. It removes the emeralds from the struggle over present rank and places their future firmly inside the language of memory. Charles accepts the arrangement as permanent. The king understands that this closes the administrative dispute that began with the rejected Windsor reception request and grew into something far more personal. By refusing to override his sister, he also accepts a difficult principle. Kingship does not require every historic object to bend toward the needs of the current court. Some parts of royal history can remain protected even when that decision creates discomfort inside the family. Anne holds the closed case one final time before returning it to secure stewardship. She does not put the necklace on. She does not reserve it for herself. That choice becomes the clearest answer to every accusation surrounding her intervention. The princess was never fighting to possess the emeralds. She was fighting to control the meaning attached to them. Camilla accepts that the restriction will stand. The queen consort still feels the sting of being denied access, but she chooses not to challenge the decision again. She understands that another fight would deepen a division already exposed before the palace and the public. Her disappointment remains real, but so does her decision to stop pushing against a boundary that Charles has now accepted. Anne gives one final instruction. The emeralds should appear again only when their use clearly connects the past to the future. Charles supports it. Together, those decisions transform the necklace from a symbol of exclusion into a symbol of continuity. And when the emerald case finally closed, so did the argument. The necklace belonged neither to Anne's triumph nor Camilla's defeat, but to a royal memory that the family had chosen, at last, to preserve above rank. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.